Hello everyone, welcome to Climate Astrologer Witness tonight. This is my third attempt at trying to do this video, and the reason is because what I'm going to read tonight is extremely important. It's very right to the root of things. I'm reading from a book, Astrological Timing, The Transition to a New Age by Dane Rudhyar. And I can't show you the cover because I'm always carrying my books around and I don't have a cover on anymore. So here comes Kitty. So I'm going to start reading. Now, I'm not going to say too much about this to begin with, to start out with, until I get done, and I'll explain more about it and about this author, this astrologer. He's an astrologer. The title. Where do we stand today? The historical and astrological approaches. It seems hardly necessary to emphasize the fact, now so evident to all perceptive human minds, that we are living in a period of tremendously accelerated change, a period of unparalleled technological, social, cultural, and psychological upheavals and transformations. Yet, while this fact is widely recognized and constantly publicized, only a minority of humans are not only really aware of its implications, but ready and willing to face these implications, both as individual persons and as members of a national and cultural collectivity. That word collectivity is the key word for the theme he is reaching for here. Okay? This evidently is not a new situation, for whenever a society has been confronted with some radical changes, only a minority of its people have ever been truly aware of what was happening or ready to reorient their minds and patterns of personal and group behavior. Think of history. Okay, think about it. This is what he's saying. But today, the situation has implications not only far more reaching than ever in recorded human history, but also more catastrophic if nothing unusual happens to repolarize and redirect the present world trends. These worldwide trends of themselves can only lead to an orgy of violence and dying born of the senseless pride, hunger, and despair which today are fast reaching an apocalyptic climax. In our era of worldwide communication and at least superficial mass thinking, no human being can be willing and ready to face the prospect of radical reorientation and social reorganization on a global scale unless he or she at least dimly understands what is happening in the process which led to such compelling and apparently irreversible events. The only alternative to understanding is an almost blind faith in the teachings and an equally blind obedience to the dictates of some religion's leader around whom an aura of divine power, wisdom, and love has been built in some more or less spectacular manner. But even in this case, it is clear that today such a leader is more or less compelled to give to his words some sort of intellectual, moral, and historical background in order to reset into some patterns of response the restless and distracted minds of the men he must reach in order to fulfill his mission. He must explain the historical process, interpret the facts of today, present a vision of the future. However irrational his approach may seem to more sophisticated minds, sophisticated college-trained and science-worshipping minds. How can we really understand what has been happening in the world of human beings since 100 or 200 years? Superficially, of course, it is easy to list transforming political events, new concepts, new discoveries, growth of industry and technology at a totally unprecedented rate, the fabulous increase in productivity resulting from the release of ever more tremendous powers and from the consequent redistribution of population and the prolongation of human lives leading to an almost catastrophic increase in population all over the globe. The question remains in the inquisitive mind, refusing to be overawed by scientific achievements, why this almost sudden outburst? This question demands some kind of answer, and what is happening to mankind has to be, if not explained, at least interpreted in terms of a large revolutionary, evolutionary, biological, or spiritual, and if possible, cosmological and metaphysical picture. An interpretation is necessary, I claim, even though the strictly existential bias and the scientific agnosticism of our day may insist that all that matters is to face the facts as they are now, and to respond to them with the best of our mental capacities, perhaps with the help of some mysterious intuition or creative power which somehow seems inherent in human nature. But facing the facts now, although it sounds good to many ears, actually of itself means very little. Who is to face the facts? Or rather, what in a human being is to do the facing? A man may want to respond wisely and creatively to a new situation, but what is it that does the responding? There are cases, undoubtedly, in which an individual confronted by a life or death emergency, unlike anyone he has met before, will perform the right action. And he may thank for this either divine providence, a guardian angel, or a soul intuition, or some form of biological or psychic instinct of self preservation. But when have we seen collectivities, even when confronted by a life or death situation, do the really right action at the proper time and with total courage, rather than too little too late? Did the French aristocracy of the 18th century or the Russian aristocracy of the 20th century or post-World War II France, facing a new situation with regard to her colonies in Indochina and Algeria, face historical social facts which were of crucial importance to healthful survival, or survival pure and simple? Are we in the United States today, confronted with the plight of our Negro population inherited from centuries of slavery and later of prejudice and neglect, meeting instinctively and with success the facts of our national life? The privileged classes in our modern cities, acting like the aristocracies of the past, or indeed all nations now playing poker games on the brink of almost incredible nuclear disaster, are apparently unable and mostly unwilling to give constructive and radically new creative answers to the totally new problems posed by a couple of centuries of vertiginous questions, vertiginous changes which are putting everything human into question. Putting everything human into question. Why is it so? Simply because the minds and emotions of human beings are set according to social, cultural, and religious ethical patterns which mold the socio-biological and spiritual environment within which these minds and emotions must develop from infancy up to a more or less conformistic maturity. You're embedded in the system. You're caught in the web like a fly. I repeat, what is it in a man that can make the right and creative answer to an almost completely new situation when the mind, the feeling responses, and the biopsychic drives of the man are set according to a tradition dominated by past values and an obsolete approach to change? Here and there, strong individuals may question and rebel against these traditional values and patterns of living, thinking, and feeling. But if these men are not to be satisfied with wild and senseless acts of revolt born of tragedy, frustration, and despair, or among the more intellectual class produced by a feeling of total emptiness and boredom, they inevitably have to base their conscious and enlightened action on an objective study of the past, a study which can also reveal something of the future. How can we gain a valid, even if only tentative and incomplete, knowledge of the future? How can we orient ourselves today towards some expectable future and make a constructive and sensible and as little wasteful as possible transition from this today to tomorrow? This is a great problem confronting at this time all perceptive, responsible, and creatively oriented individuals. To this problem, two basic solutions can be given. Hold on. The glasses are a little fogged up. So I have some ideas about some parts of this that might be a little bit vague or a little bit difficult because it was written. Well, we'll get to that. Okay. Yeah, that's better. I've only read this about 20 times. You wouldn't think so, but a little nervous. Okay. The first and today most official solution is to extrapolate what we know of the past into the future just ahead of us. A whole science called in France prospective is being built, and its perhaps slightly less formal equivalent is spreading fast as well in our country. A number of organizations and specialized firms are busy with selling to large corporations and as well to the government and to city planning commissions profiles of expectable future trends in this or that area of our national economy. These estimates of potential growth of production, group behavior, and population, and of probable discoveries or achievements in specific fields, industrial and military, here as well as in other countries, are based on statistics, on curves of previous growth, and on various more or less imponderable factors. For instance, what would the Russian government do in this or that situation, or how would the general public react to this or that new promotion scheme or new gadget? The analyst establishes the speed at which human productivity and social changes have occurred in the past centuries and millennia, and from these data they calculate what the situation will be 10 or 50 years ahead. This can produce evidently very interesting and valuable results, but it takes for granted that processes already started will unfold at a rate determinable by past performance. There is, however, a major flaw in this entire procedure. What the flaw is can be most simply illustrated by taking the example of the physical growth of a child from birth to, say, age 7. Suppose that some beings from another world who have never seen mature human bodies happen upon a group of children between these ages, steal them, and leave our planet. Their scientists might determine the rate of growth of human bodies from birth to 7, but if they were to project this rate into the future, they might believe that at the age of 30, human beings are great giants. This illustration may sound very fanciful, yet it actually applies to modern science's approach to the universe. We speak of universal laws, and on the basis of our calculations, we somewhat pontifically give expert opinions concerning the age of the universe, what has happened and will happen to our solar system and the structure of our planet, the drift of continents, etc. All of this is based upon the concept that evolution, cosmic, planetary, biological, mental, progresses more or less in a straight line, even if we relatively small ups and downs within the process. But how do we know that these laws, not only apply unchanged to the whole universe, but are the same today as they were at the time when this universe was just born? We take for granted this unchangeability of our universal constants, but why should we? Nothing around us suggests that we should simply because all that we see and experience has a beginning and an end, and the process of unfoldment from the beginning to the end proceeds according to varying rates of growth and decay. Why should we believe, for instance, that the force that we call gravitation has always the same strength? Is the vitality of a living organism the same in its infancy as when it approaches organic disintegration? Our official mentality retains still basic character of 19th century thinking. New scientific cosmologies are challenging these old concepts, but only hesitatingly and without really accepting the possibility that our universal constants might be dominated by the rhythm of an immense cosmic process which introduces cyclic patterns of change. We still believe most of the time in a straightforward ascent of humanity from primitive barbarism, in quotes, to ever more glorious civilization, in quotes. This concept is a typically Western concept. In contrast to it, we have a more characteristically Oriental picture of a cyclic universe, or even more of a multiplicity of universes, each of which is a cosmic whole which is born, develops, matures, and disintegrates after a moment of perfect fulfillment, a fulfillment which, nevertheless, leaves ashes, that is, waste material, drops out, and karmic, in quotes, residue, to be reincorporated into another universal whole, a whole different from the first, but not essentially superior. Each universe represents the working out of an immense set of potentialities, but as potentialities of existence and of cosmic wholes of existence are infinite. There is no end and no beginning to the process of existence. The concept of progress, in the usual ethically colored sense of the word, can be applied to the vast cosmic and planetary movement which leads to the perfect actualization of the initial birth potential of the cosmic or planetary whole. But symmetrically to it, there is also a process of devolution or disintegration, that is, a constant dropping out of the unusable waste materials and of what one might call, relatively speaking, evolutionary failures. The basic fact is that the entire process is cyclic. Unfortunately, since the Council of Constantinople in the 5th century, Western thinkers are conditioned by their culture to think of cycles in terms of exactly repetitive sequences of events, and Nietzsche, to satisfy his own psychological need, glorified and popularized this type of thought in his poetic picture of an eternal return. I believe, however, that a reformulation of the concept of cyclical process is today of crucial importance, for without a clear and sound understanding of what the concept of cycle implies, and especially does not imply, our present attempts at orienting ourselves toward the future of humanity in terms of perspective will lead us to conclusions and make us depend upon procedures which are likely to prove both useless and destructive. Okay, there's a lot more here, but one of the things I think he's getting at with the idea of cycles, let's put it this way, just as a very specific example. Pluto's been through Capricorn many times, but human consciousness was not aware that it existed until around the time of the discovery of the atom. And that is when we became conscious of our ability or the potential to split an atom. So basically, the correlational symbolism of Pluto is that of power to annihilate, basically. That's what that symbolizes. But in history, Pluto, the symbolism of it its work in the past was subconscious. We weren't aware of our ability to do that. And even though on a very small scale, in some situations, when Pluto was going through Capricorn, we may have come to handle our resources, our Earth resources, and manage them, Capricorn, in a very negative way, which brought annihilation or destruction. And as we can see, there's many civilizations that collapsed and they didn't exist anymore. And you can go through history and find those Jared Diamond's book and Joseph Tainter's book, they would describe many situations like this. And to some extent, you could go back probably. I mean, I haven't gone back completely, but you could find that Pluto through Capricorn was probably at work during the collapse of some of these empires, the timings. But the cycles that he's talking about, it's kind of like this. We had our chances to learn about managing our resources in a very organized way that would have been a positive for the masses. Pluto being power to transform, we could have transformed during those times, and we didn't learn that. Now, when we learned to split the atom, we had a lot of power, and we were conscious of it at that point. So did we learn anything positive during that time? I would say not, because what have we done? Okay, you can look at history and see that. And Pluto wasn't in Capricorn at the time. It was in Cancer, if I'm correct. So what we have done is, at that point, Cancer's the sign of, how can I say this? Wanting to have that emotional support, that tribe orientation. It's the family, but then, in hunter-gatherer times, it would have been your tribe, more or less, right? So with Pluto going through there at the time, you would have been very aware that there were huge changes coming in regard to your family orientation or your tribe. And those changes, made you probably hang on even more, because Pluto can do that. Oh, I'm losing this. I'm losing it. Let me hang on tighter. Let me become obsessive even. So during the Great Depression, right, Pluto through Cancer created a situation where, families, it was very important, and families were aware. They wanted to hang on to their family, the nuclear family especially, and even the extended family. But Pluto was breaking things apart because of the economic necessities of the times. Okay, now, you had the Great Depression, and along those lines, things started to devolve. And then as time has gone, every time Pluto's gone through a sign after that, we had our chance this time, because we were conscious of that power to destroy. So did we learn? Did we learn in that cycle, that repetition of that cycle? That's what we're getting at. Like, Pluto was in Capricorn again. We weren't aware enough before to learn from it, but now we're supposed to have learned. Oh, look at the past. Look at the last times, we experienced these kinds of breakdowns, these kinds of collapses, these kinds of mismanagement of our resources. So maybe we should, do something about that this time. But we're not. We're not learning about that. We're not taking control in a positive sense. We're allowing the destruction to happen because of the negatives of Pluto and the negatives of Capricorn. The elite, well, I hate using that term. I really do. But the people at the top taking control, and yet not, doing it in a way where they're using power against those at the bottom of the hierarchy, the negatives of Capricorn, making that hierarchy, okay? Class struggle. It's a big deal. It really is. You need to really learn and read more about it, and so do I still. I've read some about it here and there, but it's a real situation now where we have, the capitalists they're at the top. Well, whereas socialism, communism, and there's many other forms of economic other transformative economic systems that would be able to help the situation. But because people don't really study and learn these things in a serious way, and because there's a bias in our country when it's taught glibly or, superficially in schools, people don't really understand it. And yes, there's examples of socialism, communism that people can look at. But first of all, for instance, communism isn't really practiced the way it originally naturally developed in hunter-gatherer societies, where there's a tribe and everybody shared, because if you didn't share, the tribe didn't survive. Way back before civilization. That's how human beings managed to survive so that we now exist. If they hadn't done that, if they hadn't done a communal sharing, we wouldn't be here. You have to understand that. That was the best method for, and anthropologists say this, 50 to 200 people, approximately, this is what I've read, is the best numbers for a tribe to survive and manage to share and help each other survive socially. I want to say economically, but at the time it was more like, hey, I have enough food and your family needs some, and then back and forth. I have a skill, where I can make baskets better than you, so I'm gonna whatever. See, so once money came into the picture, and yes, China was the original inventor of money, like an actual unifying currency, or however you want to put it. Things really changed. And, the best thing I can say is one of the possibilities that could have come from Pluto and Capricorn now would have been for us to move to a degrowth society globally. But okay, I can hear some people that I know right now saying, oh yeah, right, that was never going to happen. So that's why I say we did not learn, and we are not learning the lessons of Pluto through Capricorn. Change the way you manage your economies, Capricorn. Change the way you manage your resources. We haven't learned that. We're just going whole hog into digging up the earth, but digging up the planet. And so we're using the power of Pluto in an extremely negative way. And now we've got another country who's threatening to use that Pluto power to blow everything up if he doesn't get his way. Would he really do it? Who wants to take that risk? And now we have one of the top climate scientists, James Hansen, with a new study stating that we will experience at least a 10°C rise over pre-industrial temperatures. And for the first time, I saw within that or a similar article that top scientists are now worried about the existence of nuclear plants and what's going to happen with them. What's going to happen with them as waters that cool these plants dry up and overheat, and they can't cool them on a regular basis, not for a day or a week, but on a regular basis, and the water's gone. I mean, is that going to happen tomorrow? No. But these are realities that we need to look at. And can you believe, now I'm going to tell you, this writing of this book the copyright is 1969. And when he's saying that in the very beginning, when he's stating that very first couple of sentences right here, it seems hardly necessary to emphasize the fact now so evident to all perceptive human minds that we are living in a period of tremendously accelerated change, a period of unparalleled technological, social, cultural, and psychological upheavals and transformations. What he's talking about is just industrial civilization. We moved away from everything else. Hunter-gatherers, then we developed civilization, which was agricultural, basically, agrarian. But now, what he's talking about is the speed of change, among other things, that comes with industrial civilization. He's talking about human beings and the rest of our biosphere before industrial civilization usually had time to take in and try to grasp and evolve somewhat with the changes, because everything was so slow. And hunter-gatherer times, change came thousands of years at a time. Life didn't change much at all from day to day, from year to year, to century to millennia. Didn't change much at all. But now, change is constant. And it's amazing that the way he's organizing those thoughts and trying to get across to people that the kind of experience that we now are having is unprecedented compared to our ancestors. And everybody's all excited. Yes, we can do this now. We've invented this and everything's easier. But yet they're not looking at the realities, and we are missing the whole picture. It's like, you give a kid, a 16-year-old, a sports car and let him just go. Oh yeah, he's got his permit, he can drive now. We practiced a lot. Really? This undeveloped teenage mind, you're going to give him a sports car? Really? How many horrible stories have we heard because of that? If that kid's I'm joking here, but he's a Capricorn with Taurus rising and Virgo moon, he might not have any problems. But yeah, you don't do that. You don't give a 16-year-old a massively, pumped up sports car. I don't think. That happens all the time, though, of course. That's what we've done with industrial civilization. Basically, we're kind of a very immature species. We don't have the wisdom to handle the industrialism, the technological innovation. We don't have the wisdom. You can see it all around us. So, okay, that's probably it for today, folks. Just hope you enjoyed this. Hope I read it way better a couple of times before I was on the camera, but hopefully it was pretty smooth and you got the gist. And you can look up his book, Dane Rudhyar. Look him up, Rudhyard. Make sure I said that right. Yeah, Rudhyar. Dane Rudhyar. Okay, Dane. Dane. Okay, Rudhyar. Astrological Timing, the transition to a new age. Okay, I'm not sure when I'll do another video. It's kind of hard for me right now. It's been that way. It's not an easy thing, but I have to put these things out here because I see other people, and they're always talking about, oh, everything's going to be new, light, and wonder, and we're evolving, and we're going to be better. And even though, I hear a lot about AI coming out lately, and yes, Pluto is about to move into Aquarius in March, dip its toe in and come back into Capricorn. So we get a little taste of what the Pluto in Capricorn and Aquarius is going to be March to June this next year. It ought to be interesting. But, I was always, when I was younger, interested in, wow, look at that, that's great. If they'd have talked about AI and all these innovations with human beings in my 30s and such, I was like 20s, 30s, even early 40s, I was like, this is so interesting. I was all excited. Space travel, all that, wow, because I have that pioneer spirit kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. We just don't look at ourselves really. We have to do that, and we're not. Um, I don't have any answers. The degrowth would be wonderful. Whether it's too late even now to have an effect, really, it really is. But, if we were going to try to do the right thing instead of, the gorging that we've been doing off the earth, it would be nice. Okay, over now.